In case you can't see my shirt, it says "Let Me Be Brave." It was an Amazon wish list gift. Anyway, so therapy was really productive today. But there's a couple things I'm going to talk on. But first of all, my mom and we had the important death talk. How does she feel about it? What does she want at a funeral? Those things, those little nitty gritty things. We had that conversation. So I'm not worrying about that aspect of the future. So she's not afraid to die. She's not happy that it's happening, but she doesn't feel like it's such a huge tragedy because she's 80 years old. She's lived a long life, and whenever her time comes, she's okay with the fact that she doesn't have a long time. We don't know how long. She didn't ask, but but I'm just relieved of the burden of wondering what to do for a funeral because I wanted to do right for her. So I know what songs she wants. I know one of the Bible readings she wants. She just has one specific and then the rest she doesn't care. But anyway, number 2. I had a big step forward in terms of dealing with my trauma. And it's something where I had an experience and then I'm now processing and learning from it. And it seems so ridiculous at the time when it happened. It was Friday night, and me and my dad, we were talking and laughing and being silly, and then I relayed to him a story of something that had happened in choir, on Thursday night, the night before. We had gotten a music exchange where we turn in old music and get new music. We're working on Lent Lent. We're not working on Easter yet, but we will. But we have our Lent and Holy Week music. Lent is the 40 days that Jesus was in the desert, being tempted by the devil. And then Holy Week is, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, Easter. And then we go into the Easter timeline and then back to ordinary time. So if you're Catholic, it makes sense. If you're not, don't worry about it. And if my lips are shiny, it's because I got Vaseline on them. They're so chapped, it hurts. Yeah. So we had gotten our new music, and there's a Kyrie piece by Sam Keen that when I got it, there was like a stain on it, like mustard or ink or something. It's kind of a yellowish color. And I made a joke that, oh, there's a huge booger in my music. Hey, John, is it yours? John's my choir director. And he started laughing. He's like, no. And the choir around me started laughing about it because I'm like, oh, there's a booger in my music. And I say absurd things. That's just who I am. And the choir, they thought it was funny. They thought it was hilarious, and they were all laughing. And I relayed this story to my dad because he'd said something funny, and I was like, oh yeah, something funny happened in choir last night. And I told him, and all of a sudden he's like, he just stopped laughing. He's like, Cindy, that's not funny. Nobody thinks you're funny. Nobody cares about this Godzilla shit you're always talking about. You're not as funny as you think you are. And my whole life, my dad has drilled into my head that he's the only person that will tell me the absolute truth and that other people are just going to blow smoke up my ass to make me feel better. And I internalized that for so many years. I believed that I am annoying, that I am not funny, that I just take up space and get in everybody's way, that I'm not intelligent, that nobody really likes me, that I'm only tolerated but not liked or loved. That is bullshit he's put in my head for years. And that night, something in me lit on fire. And instead of shrinking, I grew into that space he was trying to take away from me. I grew into that space and I fought back. Like, it was just explosive yelling and swearing. And I walked away to collect myself. And I went back in, and he's like, I know I hurt you, but you need to know the truth. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, old man. And I cussed him out because I was mad. I was triggered, and I was mad. And my mom came and checked on me after I stopped to make sure I was okay, and I was. But I couldn't put into words why I had reacted that way. Other than he had made me really angry. And the next morning, I went in and I asked him, I'm like, do you understand why I got mad last night? And he's like, you're just upset because I don't think you're funny. And I'm like, no, that's not what you said. And he's like, well, you're not funny. Nobody thinks you're funny. And I'm like, right there, that? You think you speak for everybody. You think that because you don't think I'm funny, that nobody else thinks I'm funny. And he's like, well, nobody knows what to do with you. And I'm like, shut up. The choir was laughing last night. Or the choir was laughing on Thursday night. And, the night before, I had gone to Blue Sky and I kind of exploded about it because I was mad. And people were saying, you know what, your shit posts are actually funny. There's some of the reasons why I log on is to see what kind of weird shit you say. So, there was that. But just the fact that my dad thought that he could once again make me shrink out of a space that belongs to me. And I fought back and I rebelled. Instead of shrinking and accepting what he said, I fought back and I rebelled and I claimed that space in me, in myself, that he usually occupies. I took it back. And I told him, you're free to find me not funny all you want. I don't care about that. What I care about is you thinking you speak for everybody. Because I've spent my whole life believing all these things about myself because you said it. And that's not true. Your opinion is not everyone's opinion, Dad. Your opinion is not the same opinion that everyone else has. And just because you don't think I'm funny doesn't mean nobody else thinks I'm funny. Because, the absurd things I say, they go over like a lead balloon sometimes. They're not funny, and sometimes they are. Either way, I don't care. It's just who I am to just come out with something really random and silly. That's how I am. I'll make jokes about anything, granting it's appropriate to make one, and if it's not, I don't. But sometimes the dark humor will slip out. And I just need somebody to go, this isn't the time, and I'll be like, okay. But dark humor is kind of how I cope with things sometimes. And just general humor is a way to feel safe. Because it's like knowing my audience and what do they find silly. And if what I'm doing isn't something, then I know I don't do that. But the choir, my people, they think my absurdity is hilarious. And that's just... And my dad is trying to convince me that it actually isn't because he wants me to be small and quiet. And that night, I got big and loud instead. I did the opposite of what he wanted. Because that night, I wasn't seeking his approval. I was just sharing an experience, and he took a shit all over it. And I took that shit and I threw it back instead of just taking it. And that's a big step for me, because normally I just internalize this stuff and it hurts me. And I just let it keep hurting me. And he even expressed that he knew he had hurt me, and I didn't let him finish. I'm like, no, you hurt me, and that's not okay. Period. End of story. And then he got quiet, and I told him, 90% of why I'm in therapy is because of the shit you've done to me, and the shit you put in my head that I have to figure out how to undo because it's hurting me and damaging me. And he went into the silent treatment. He was expecting me to apologize for everything I'd said that had hurt him. Never mind that he had hurt me. It didn't matter to him that he'd hurt me, but because I hurt him, I had to always be the bigger person. And by apologizing for things that were not my fault, apologizing for taking up space, I would shrink myself for him. And that time I didn't. I fucking grew into a space that was mine, and I decide who gets to be in that space, not him. He doesn't get to decide what I do with the space that I live in and occupy, and I'm allowed to take up as much space as I want. And he's not allowed, permitted, or welcome in my space, in the space inside of my head where I live. He doesn't belong there. And I'm working on purging him from that space within me. Because he's a big reason the space inside my head is not a safe place. He's a big reason. But you are allowed to claim space, and you are allowed to fight for that space, and you are allowed to occupy space. No. Allowed is probably not a good word. That means someone else can give you permission. You can take up space. You do take up space. And that's a good thing. Okay, you claim your space. You get big and you roar. Whenever people want you to shrink from who you are, you get bigger. And you be even more of who you are. Because nobody has the right to dictate that. Nobody can dictate that. You are who you are. And don't be sorry for that. All right? Take up space. Take up space. Okay? Love you guys.